Good morning, America. As we stand here on September 11th, 2025, the air still holds the warmth of a lingering summer. The days are long, the sun is bright, and honestly, the thought of pulling out heavy coats and snow shovels might feel a world away. But in the world of meteorology, we're always looking ahead, piecing together a complex puzzle that will become our reality in just a few short months. The big question on everyone's mind is always the same. What will this winter be like? Will it be mild and forgettable? Or will it be a season that delivers record-breaking snow and bone-chilling cold? This year, the signals we're seeing suggest that the winter of 2025 to 2026 could be one for the books, a season of dramatic shifts and memorable weather events that will touch every corner of the country. So why should you care about a forecast that's still months away? Because winter weather isn't just small talk, it's a powerful force that shapes our lives. It determines whether our kids have a snow day, whether we can make it to work safely, and how high our heating bills will climb. A harsh winter can strain city budgets, disrupt national travel for weeks on end, and pose serious risks to our health and safety. A mild winter can save us money and stress, but it can also hurt regions that depend on a healthy snowpack for water. Understanding what might be coming allows us to prepare, to plan, and to face the season with confidence instead of anxiety. To understand what's coming this winter, we first need to talk about the big three of seasonal forecasting. These are the major players that set the stage for everything else. First and foremost is the jet stream. Imagine a fast-moving river of air, thousands of feet up in the atmosphere circling the globe. This river doesn't flow in a straight line. It weaves and wobbles, dipping south and bulging north. Where the jet stream goes, weather follows. When it dips far to the south, it allows frigid Arctic air to plunge into the United States, bringing the kind of cold that makes your face hurt. When it retreats north, it allows milder, more southerly air to take over. The path of the jet stream is the single most important factor in determining whether your winter is cold and snowy or mild and wet. The second major player is the polar vortex. This term has gotten a lot of attention in recent years, and sometimes it's a bit misunderstood. It's not a storm that hits your town directly. Instead, it's a massive area of low pressure and extremely cold air that consistently sits over the North Pole. Most of the time, it stays up there, spinning like a top. But sometimes it can become unstable, weaken, or get wobbled off its axis. When this happens, it can stretch or split, sending lobes of that intensely cold Arctic air southward. These outbreaks are what lead to the prolonged, dangerous deep freezes that can grip entire sections of the country for days or even weeks at a time. We are watching its stability very closely this year. Third, we look at large-scale pressure patterns, especially what we call blocking patterns. One of the most significant is the North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO. In its positive phase, we tend to see storms track farther north, often bringing milder conditions to the eastern United States. But in its negative phase, high pressure sets up near Greenland, acting like a giant traffic cop in the sky. This Greenland block forces the jet stream to dive southward over the eastern half of the country, creating a perfect storm track for powerful nor'easters and keeping cold air locked in place. The interplay between the jet stream, the polar vortex, and these blocking patterns is the intricate dance that dictates the character of our winter. One of the biggest questions we have to answer when building a winter forecast is about the state of the Pacific Ocean. Specifically, we look at a phenomenon known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. This refers to the temperature of the water in a specific region of the equatorial Pacific. When those waters are warmer than average, we call it El Niño. When they are colder than average, we call it La Niña. When they are right around average, we call it a neutral phase. You can think of this as a giant heat engine for the planet. The immense amount of energy released or absorbed by the ocean in this region has a massive ripple effect on weather patterns around the globe, including right here in the United States. For the upcoming winter of 2025 to 2026, the models are strongly indicating a transition into a moderate to strong La Niña phase. What does this typically mean for a United States winter? A classic La Niña pattern often energizes the northern branch of the jet stream. This tends to create a storm track that dives into the Pacific Northwest, bringing abundant rain and mountain snow, and then races across the northern tier of the country. This pattern often results in colder than average temperatures for the northern plains and Midwest, along with an active storm track that can bring significant snowfall to the Great Lakes region. It's a pattern that favors a true, classic American winter for many. In contrast, the southern part of the country often experiences the opposite effect during a La Niña winter. The southern jet stream tends to be weaker and less active, leading to warmer and drier than average conditions across the Sunbelt, desert Southwest Florida southeast. This can be bad news for areas already struggling with drought, as La Niña can make those conditions worse. For the tens of millions of people living along the I-95 corridor Washington, D.C. to Boston, the winter forecast is all about snow. The big question is always, will we see blockbuster nor'easters or a winter bust? This year, the developing La Niña pattern combined with other signals points toward a classic battleground scenario for the Northeast. This means the region is likely to be right on the edge of the dominant storm track. Storms moving across the country will often try to cut up through the Ohio Valley, which would mean more rain and mixing events for the big coastal cities. However, the potential for Greenland blocking is the wild card. If that blocking high sets up in the North Atlantic, it will act like a roadblock, forcing storms to slow down, strengthen, and track closer to the coast. This is the perfect setup for a classic nor'easter, a powerful, slow-moving storm that can dump 1 to 2 feet of snow or more, accompanied by howling winds and coastal flooding. Our forecast calls for a higher than average probability of at least 2 to 3 such significant coastal storms this season. In terms of temperature, the forecast indicates a roller coaster season. We don't expect relentlessly cold conditions from December through February. Instead, the pattern supports periods of mild, above-average temperatures, followed by sharp, sudden intrusions of Arctic air. This back-and-forth temperature pattern will be a defining characteristic of the winter for the Northeast and New England. For the Midwest, this winter is shaping up to be a true test of resilience. The forecast, influenced by La Niña, points toward a colder and snowier than average season. From the Dakotas through the Great Lakes, the dominant storm track will ride through this region, bringing frequent Alberta clippers, fast-moving storms that don't always drop much snow at once, but arrive every few days, each dragging reinforcing shots of cold Canadian air. Result: consistent cold and steady snow accumulation. The Great Lakes will play a starring role. Lakes start relatively warm and mostly ice-free. Cold Arctic air blowing over Lake Superior, cold Arctic air blowing over Lake Michigan, cold Arctic air blowing over the other Great Lakes. That interaction triggers prolific lake effect snow. Western Michigan, northern Indiana, Ohio, western New York. Expect localized headline-making totals before the lakes freeze over later in the season. Midwest likely to see the coldest departures from average. For the southern United States, Arizona, the Carolinas, the La Niña forecast points toward a warmer and drier than average winter. The dominant northern storm track will likely starve this region of consistent moisture. The jet stream will favor milder air from the Gulf of Mexico and from the Pacific. For many, that means fewer chilly days and more sunshine. However, this pattern could worsen ongoing drought conditions, Southwest Texas, the Southern Plains. But a warmer, drier season doesn't mean the South is off the hook for winter weather. The wavy, amplified jet stream we expect this year means cold air can arrive with a vengeance. These will likely be sharp, shocking intrusions of Arctic air, rather than sustained cold spells. A single dip in the jet stream could be potent enough to drag temperatures from the 60s down into the 20s in just a day or two. That scenario could bring a damaging freeze to Florida's citrus groves, or create a rare but high-impact ice storm in Atlanta, Dallas, or Nashville if just enough moisture is present when the cold air arrives. Moving into the west, particularly California and the desert Southwest, the La Niña pattern is a major concern for water resources. These regions rely heavily on a handful of large winter storms, often called atmospheric rivers, to build up the mountain snowpack that provides a majority of their water supply. The Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, is positioned to be the focal point of an active and wet winter. The La Niña-driven jet stream will aim a steady stream of Pacific storms directly at this region. For coastal and lowland areas, Seattle, Portland, that means above-average rainfall and persistent gray drizzle. The headline will be mountain snow. The storm track will dump heavy snow on the Cascade Mountains, Olympic Mountains. Great news for the region's water supply. A dream forecast for the ski industry. Mount Baker Stevens Pass, Mount Hood, primed for an epic season. Snow totals could rank among the highest in recent memory. That raises the chance of snow mixing into the Seattle metro area, the Portland metro area. It will live up to the region's rainy reputation. A forecast like this isn't just about weather maps and statistics. It's about how the season will feel and how it will affect our day-to-day lives. For millions of Americans, especially in the Midwest and in the Northeast, this winter could bring significant disruptions to travel. Frequent clipper systems, major nor'easters, outbreaks of Arctic air will make road travel challenging and air travel challenging. Now is the perfect time to start preparing. Don't wait for the first snowflake to fly. Check your home's insulation, seal any drafts around windows and doors. Have your furnace inspected to make sure it's running safely and efficiently. If you live in a snowy region, make sure you have shovels and salt ready to go. In your car, assemble a winter emergency kit: blankets, water, snacks, a flashlight, a phone charger. Good all-season or winter tires are one of the most important safety investments you can make. Personal safety is paramount during severe winter weather. When extreme cold hits, limit your time outdoors. Dress in warm layers, covering all exposed skin to prevent frostbite and hypothermia. Be a good neighbor and check on elderly or vulnerable friends and family. When traveling, always check the latest forecast and road conditions before you leave. If the weather is truly dangerous, the safest decision is to stay home. Following the advice of local officials and emergency managers is the best way to keep your family safe. By staying informed, being prepared, and looking out for one another, we can face whatever this season throws our way. Stay safe and stay warm.